The crystal chandelier above the mahogany dining table cast fractured light across 20 place settings of bone china, each position marked by gleaming silverware that cost more than most people earned in a year. Konstantin Volkov sat at the head of the table, his iron-gray eyes scanning the assembled members of his organization with the cold assessment of a predator counting his pack. Christmas dinner at the Volkov estate was not a celebration. It was a demonstration of power, a mandatory gathering where loyalty was displayed and hierarchies reinforced. More wine, his underboss, Grigor Antonov, demanded, snapping his fingers toward the service door. Konstantin noted the gesture with distaste. Grigor was useful but crude, lacking the refined menace that true power required. Still, the man knew how to break bones and extract information, which made him valuable enough to tolerate at the table. The door swung open, and Konstantin expected to see Mira Castellano, the young maid he'd inherited from his late uncle's household 6 months ago. She'd been a silent, efficient presence in the estate, moving through rooms like smoke, never drawing attention to herself. He approved of her invisibility. Servants who understood their place were rare. But the door remained empty. No one emerged. "Where is the girl?" Konstantin's consigliere, Dmitry Belov, asked, his weathered face creasing with annoyance. Dmitry had served the Volkov family for 40 years and viewed any disruption to routine as a personal insult. Konstantin's jaw tightened. Incompetence was one thing he couldn't abide, and absence without permission was incompetence elevated to insubordination. He'd been generous with the girl, allowing her to live in the servants' quarters, feeding her, paying her wages that she sent home to whatever hovel she came from. And this was how she repaid that generosity? "Perhaps she's run off," suggested Natalia Ivanov, the only woman at the table who wasn't arm candy. She ran the money laundering operations through her chain of art galleries and had earned her seat through ruthless efficiency. These charity cases always disappoint in the end. No. The word came from Yevgeny Sokolov, Konstantin's head of security. The massive man stood near the wall, as he always did, preferring to watch rather than sit. "Her coat is still in the staff room, her bag with her phone. No one leaves in this weather without those." Konstantin stood abruptly, his chair scraping against marble with a sound like a blade being drawn. "Then where is she?" The temperature in the room dropped, though the fireplace still crackled with burning oak. When Konstantin Volkov asked a question in that particular tone, people either answered immediately or faced consequences that served as cautionary tales for months afterward. "I'll check the kitchen," said Irina Koskovich, the housekeeper who managed the staff. She was one of the few people who could move quickly in Konstantin's presence without appearing to flee. Perhaps she fell ill and is resting. But Konstantin was already moving, his long legs carrying him toward the service corridors with Yevgeny falling into step behind him. The Christmas dinner could wait. Someone in his house had broken protocol, and he would know why. The kitchen was empty, pots of food keeping warm on the massive commercial stove. The other staff members had been given the evening off to celebrate with their families. Only Mira had been required to stay because Konstantin had specifically requested her service. She was quieter than the others, less prone to gossip or unnecessary chatter. "The back door," Yevgeny said, pointing to where snow had blown across the threshold in a telltale drift. Konstantin's blood, already cold by nature, turned to ice in his veins. He strode to the door and threw it open, stepping into the bitter Chicago winter night. The estate's back courtyard was usually a pristine space of geometrically arranged hedges and stone pathways. Tonight, it was a white wilderness, the blizzard that had been threatening all day having finally descended with savage intensity. Wind screamed through the bare branches of ornamental trees, and snow fell so thick it created a shifting curtain that obscured everything beyond 10 feet. "There." Yevgeny's voice was sharp, pointing toward a dark shape near the service gate. Konstantin moved through the snow, his expensive Italian shoes filling with ice, his tailored suit jacket providing no protection against the wind. He didn't notice. His entire focus had narrowed to that crumpled form. Mira Castellano lay curled on her side in the snow, her black maid's uniform soaked through, her dark hair plastered to her face. Her skin had taken on a grayish pallor, and her lips held a distinct blue tinge. She wasn't moving. For a moment, the first time in 15 years, Konstantin Volkov felt something close to fear. He dropped to his knees beside her, ignoring the snow soaking through his pants. "Mira!" His hand went to her throat, searching for a pulse. Her skin was ice against his fingers. Mira! There, faint, irregular, but present. A heartbeat. She's alive, he barked at Yevgeny. Call Dr. Ruslan, now. Tell him if he's not here in 15 minutes, I'll burn his practice to the ground with him in it. Konstantin gathered Mira into his arms, shocked by how little she weighed. She was small, he'd noticed that before, but holding her like this, feeling how her bones seemed to press against her skin, he realized she was malnourished. How had he not seen it? How had his staff let one of their own waste away under his roof? He carried her inside, moving past the shocked faces of his dinner guests who had emerged from the dining room. Their eyes tracked his progress with varying degrees of surprise. Konstantin Volkov did not carry unconscious maids through his house. He had people for that. But he wasn't stopping, wasn't slowing. His mind was calculating with the same precision he applied to hostile takeovers and territorial disputes. Body temperature, dangerously low. Time of exposure, unknown but clearly extensive. Risk of frostbite, hypothermia, organ failure, all high. He took her to his private quarters on the second floor, a suite of rooms that even his most trusted associates never entered. His bedroom was decorated in severe minimalism. Black and gray, clean lines, nothing soft except the massive bed that dominated the space. He laid Mira on the bed and immediately began stripping off her wet clothing. The uniform's buttons were crusted with ice, and his fingers, normally so precise, fumbled slightly as rage built in his chest. Who had made her go outside? Why had she been at the service gate at all? Underneath the uniform, she wore a thin cotton slip that was equally soaked. He removed it without hesitation, then wrapped her in the fur blanket from the foot of his bed. His hands rubbed her arms, her legs, trying to restore circulation. Her skin felt like marble under his palms. "Don't you dare die," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Do you hear me, Mira Castellano? I didn't give you permission to die." Her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. Irina appeared in the doorway, her face white with shock. "Mr. Volkov, bring towels, warm water, blankets, everything." He didn't look up from Mira's face. "And find out why she was outside." The housekeeper fled. Konstantin continued working, his movements becoming gentler as he saw the damage the cold had done. Her fingertips were an alarming shade of purple-gray. Her feet looked worse. He swore in Russian, words his mother would have slapped him for using even now, years after her death. Dr. Ivan Ruslan arrived in 12 minutes, his medical bag clutched in one hand, his face sweating despite the winter cold. He was a short man with thinning hair and the nervous energy of someone who knew exactly how dangerous his primary patient was. "Out," he said to Konstantin, with the authority of the only professional in the city who could give the Mafia boss orders. "I need space to work." Konstantin's instinct was to refuse, to plant himself beside the bed and ensure every measure was taken, but he was pragmatic enough to know his presence would only hinder. He stepped back, but only to the doorway. From there, he watched as Dr. Ruslan checked Mira's vital signs, started in 4-line, wrapped her extremities in specialized warming bandages. "How bad?" Konstantin asked after 10 minutes of silence. "Bad enough, another hour, and we'd be having a very different conversation." Dr. Ruslan looked up, his expression grave. "She has moderate to severe hypothermia, possible frostbite on her fingers and toes. Too early to tell if there's permanent damage. She's severely dehydrated and malnourished, which made her more vulnerable to the cold." "When did she last eat?" Konstantin stopped. He didn't know. He didn't know when his staff ate, didn't know their schedules or routines beyond how they intersected with his own needs. "I don't know." "Find out." Dr. Ruslan returned his attention to his patient. "She needs to be monitored constantly for the next 48 hours. Warm fluids when she wakes, no hot water, no heating pads, gradual warming only. I'll stay tonight." Konstantin nodded and turned to find half his organization crowded in the hallway, trying to peer into his private sanctuary. His rage, which had been burning cold and focused while he dealt with Mira's crisis, now erupted with volcanic heat. "Dmitri," he said quietly, too quietly. Everyone who knew him took a collective step backward. "Find out what happened. Find out why she was outside, who told her to go, and why no one noticed she was missing. You have 1 hour." He turned to the others. "This dinner is over. Everyone out." If you're still in my house in 10 minutes, Yevgeny will assume you're an intruder and respond accordingly. They scattered like roaches when the lights come on. Mira woke to warmth and confusion. The warmth came from the softest blanket she'd ever felt, and the confusion came from trying to remember where she was and how she'd gotten there. The last thing she clearly recalled was standing outside in the snow, her body shaking so hard her teeth rattled, trying to remember why she'd come outside in the first place. Before that, dinner service. She'd been preparing to bring wine to the dining room when Grigor Antonov had appeared in the kitchen, his breath reeking of vodka, his eyes mean. "The boss wants you outside," he'd said. "Someone left the service gate open and he's worried about security. Go check if it's clear and lock it from outside, then come around to the front." She'd thought it strange. Why wouldn't Yevgeny handle security? But she didn't question orders from the boss's inner circle, so she'd gone outside without her coat because it would just take a moment, just a quick check of the gate, except the gate had been locked already. And when she'd tried to return to the house, the back door had been locked too. She'd pounded on it, called out, but the storm had swallowed her voice. She'd gone around to the front, but those doors were locked as well, and she couldn't reach the bell. That's when the cold had really started to seep into her bones. That's when she'd realized she might die in the snow on Christmas, and no one would even notice until it was time to clear the driveway. But she wasn't dead. She was warm and comfortable, and Mira's eyes snapped open fully, and she sat up so fast the room spun. This wasn't her small cot in the staff quarters. This was a massive bedroom decorated with severe elegance, and she was in a bed that probably cost more than her father's medical bills. "Careful!" The voice came from a chair near the window, where Konstantin Volkov sat watching her with those unsettling gray eyes. "Dr. Roslan said you need to move slowly." Mira's hand clutched the blanket to her chest, and she realized with horror that she was naked beneath it. Her face flamed. "Mr. Volkov, I'm sorry, I don't—" "Stop apologizing and tell me what happened." He stood and moved toward the bed, and Mira had to fight every instinct that told her to flee. She'd worked in the Volkov household for 6 months, had seen Konstantin nearly every day, but always from a safe distance. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a face that looked like it had been carved from granite by a sculptor who specialized in depicting wrath. "I went outside to check the gate," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was told you wanted—" "I gave no such order." "But Mr. Antonov said, Grigor told you I wanted the gate checked?" Something dangerous flashed in Konstantin's eyes. "During dinner service? Without your coat?" Mira nodded, shrinking back against the pillows. She'd never seen anyone look quite so furious, and she desperately didn't want that fury directed at her, but Konstantin took a visible breath, his expression smoothing into the cold mask he usually wore. "What else?" She told him everything. The locked doors, the storm, her failed attempts to get back inside. As she spoke, she watched his hands curl into fists and then slowly relax, a process he repeated several times. "How long have you worked for me?" he asked when she finished. "6 months, sir." "And in that time, have you ever received an order directly from me?" Mira thought about it. "No, sir. Mrs. Koskovich tells me what to do." "Then why would you think I would suddenly start giving orders through Grigor?" It was a fair question, and Mira felt stupid for not considering it at the time. "I didn't think, sir. I just obeyed. I thought maybe it was different because it was Christmas dinner, because there were so many important people here." Konstantin moved closer, and Mira instinctively pressed herself back against the headboard. He noticed and stopped, something that might have been frustration crossing his face. "I'm not going to hurt you." "I know, sir. You're terrified of me." It wasn't a question, but Mira answered anyway. "Yes, sir." "Why?" She blinked at him, wondering if this was some kind of test. "Because you're Konstantin Volkov, sir." "That's not an answer." "Isn't it?" The words slipped out before she could stop them, and Mira immediately wanted to stuff them back in. "You didn't question the boss? You didn't sass him? You definitely didn't—" But Konstantin laughed. It was a short, sharp sound, like he'd surprised himself. "Fair enough." He pulled the chair closer to the bed and sat, which somehow made him less intimidating. How old are you, Mira? 23, sir. And you send all your wages home? She nodded, confused by the questions. My father has cancer, lung cancer. The treatments are expensive, and my mother can't work because she has to take care of him. My younger sister is still in school. The money I make here, it keeps them fed, keeps the lights on, pays for Dad's medicine. When did you last eat? Mira's face heated again. I eat, sir, Mrs. Koskovich. When? Yesterday morning, she admitted quietly. There was bread and cheese, but I had to skip lunch and dinner yesterday because Mrs. Koskovich needed help with preparations for tonight, and today I was going to eat after service. You've gone 36 hours without food. I've gone longer. She regretted the words immediately when his eyes narrowed. I mean, sometimes I save my meals, send the money home instead. It's fine, I'm fine. You nearly died tonight because you were too weak from hunger to fight off the cold. I nearly died tonight because someone tried to kill me, Mira said, then clapped a hand over her mouth. But it was true, wasn't it? Grigor had sent her out there. Grigor had locked her out. Grigor had tried to murder her. The question was why. Constantine studied the young woman in his bed and felt something he'd thought long dead stirring in his chest. She was right. Grigor had tried to kill her. The question of why was one Dmitri was currently extracting answers to in the basement interrogation room, but Constantine could already guess the broad strokes. Grigor was ambitious. Grigor thought Constantine was getting soft, spending too much time on legitimate business ventures and not enough on the traditional sources of the organization's power. Grigor had been making noises about leadership challenges, whispers that Constantine's consigliere had reported and that Constantine had been monitoring. What better way to demonstrate Constantine's weakness than to kill someone right under his nose? To murder a helpless maid during a gathering of the entire organization? If Constantine couldn't protect one insignificant servant, how could he protect any of them? It was actually a clever move. Grigor would have assumed no one would care about a maid's death, that Constantine would be embarrassed by the breach but not devastated. He couldn't have known that Constantine would carry the girl to his own bedroom, would sit vigil beside her bed, would feel something uncomfortably close to relief when her eyes finally opened. What you did was stupid, Constantine said, watching Mira's face. Following orders without questioning them, going outside without proper clothing, believing that I would care about a gate during a Christmas dinner. Mira's eyes dropped to the blanket. Yes, sir. But you're alive because you're strong. Weaker people would have given up, laid down in that snow, and let the cold take them. You kept fighting. You kept trying to find a way back inside. She looked up, surprised. That kind of strength is rare, Constantine continued. That kind of will, I can use that. Sir, you're not going back to being a maid. He made the decision as he spoke, intuition and calculation aligning perfectly. You're going to work directly for me. Personal assistant, let's call it. You'll manage my schedule, handle correspondence, be my eyes and ears in the legitimate businesses. I need someone I can trust, someone loyal. You don't know me, Mira said softly. How do you know you can trust me? Because I just saved your life, and you're practical enough to understand what that means. Because you're smart enough to recognize an opportunity. Because you have people depending on you, which gives you motivation to succeed. He leaned forward. And because I'm an excellent judge of character, and I think you're someone who values honesty and hard work, which are in short supply in my world. Mira was quiet for a long moment, her dark eyes searching his face for something he couldn't name. Finally, she said, If I work for you directly, will I still be able to send money home? You'll make 5 times what you're making now. Her breath caught. That's very generous, Mr. Volkov. Constantine. The word surprised him. He never invited familiarity, never allowed anyone to breach the walls he'd built around himself. But something about this fragile, fierce woman made him want to break his own rules. When we're alone, you call me Constantine. I don't think that wasn't a request. She bit her lip, and Constantine found himself fascinated by the gesture. Okay, Constantine. His name and her soft voice did something strange to his chest, something he hadn't felt since... No, he wouldn't think about Katya, wouldn't compare this quiet maid to the wife whose death had carved out his humanity and left only the monster behind. Get some rest, he said, standing abruptly. Dr. Ruslan will check on you in the morning. You're staying in this room until he clears you to move around. This is your room, Mira protested. I can't. You can and you will. I have a dozen other bedrooms in this house. He moved toward the door, then paused. Mira, about what happened tonight, it's been handled. You're safe now. He saw her shiver despite the warm blankets, saw the fear flash across her face. She was smart enough to understand what handled meant in his world. Did you kill him? She whispered. Constantine considered lying, but she deserved honesty. Not yet, but I will. Grigor Antonov tried to kill you, and worse, he tried to make me look weak in front of my organization. That requires a response that serves as a message to anyone else who might have similar ideas. Because of what it says about you. Yes. Not because of what it did to me. He turned fully to face her, studying the accusation in her eyes. Both, he said finally. Is that honest enough for you? Why do you care what I think? I don't know. The admission cost him, but he gave it anyway. But I do. Now rest. You're no good to me, dead or damaged. He left before she could respond, closing the door on her confused expression and his own turmoil. Dmitri was waiting outside the door, his lined face grim. We have answers. Talk while we walk. Constantine headed for the basement stairs, his expensive shoes echoing on marble. Behind him, Dmitri's heavier tread followed. Grigor was planning a coup, Dmitri said. He had 6 of the junior soldiers ready to back him, thought he could take control by demonstrating your weakness. The girl was supposed to die, and he was going to use your failure to protect her as evidence that you've gone soft, that you care more about legitimate business than the family. Names of the 6? Dmitri rattled them off, and Constantine committed each one to memory. They were all young, ambitious, stupid, the kind of men who thought brutality was the same as strength, who mistook his strategic patience for weakness. They reached the basement door, and Constantine paused. The girl is now under my direct protection. Spread the word. Anyone who touches her, looks at her wrong, even thinks about harming her will face me personally. Clear? Crystal. But Constantine, people will talk. A maid in your bedroom, given a position in the organization, they'll say, let them say whatever they want. She's earned her place. He pushed open the door and descended into the cold concrete corridors beneath the house. This was the part of his empire that never appeared in the ledgers, the place where problems were solved with more permanent solutions. Grigor hung from chains in the interrogation room, his face a mess of blood and bruises. Yevgeny stood nearby, methodically cleaning his knuckles with a white handkerchief that was rapidly turning red. Still alive? Constantine asked. Barely. He talks a lot when motivated. Yevgeny's flat voice held a note of disgust. Cries, too, not what I expected from someone planning a rebellion. Constantine approached Grigor, studying the man who had served in his organization for 5 years. He'd always been useful, efficient at the brutal work that needed doing. But usefulness didn't excuse treachery. You locked a 23-year-old girl outside in a blizzard, Constantine said conversationally. A girl who weighs maybe 100 pounds, who sends every penny she earns to her sick father. You sentenced her to freeze to death alone and terrified, all so you could prove I'm weak. Grigor's swollen eyes cracked open. She's just a maid, he mumbled through broken teeth. Nobody, nothing. That's where you're wrong. Constantine's voice dropped to a whisper, and everyone in the room tensed. This was the voice that preceded very bad things. She's under my protection now. And you hurt what's mine. Since when do you care about some poverty case maid? It was a good question, one Constantine had been asking himself for the past 3 hours. He didn't have a good answer, so he gave the only one that mattered. Since tonight, Yevgeny? The big man handed him a pistol. Constantine checked the chamber, then met Grigor's eyes. You wanted to prove I'm weak? Let me show you how wrong you are. I'm going to kill you. Then I'm going to kill everyone who helped you. Then I'm going to find your family, your brother in Cleveland, your cousin in Detroit, and I'm going to have a conversation with them about the consequences of betrayal. And if I ever hear even a whisper of another challenge to my authority, I'll do it all again. Constantine, wait! Grigor's voice rose to a panicked shriek. I'm sorry, I was stupid, I was drunk, I didn't mean. The gunshot echoed in the concrete room. Grigor's body swung once, then hung still. Clean this up, Konstantin told Yevgeny. Then bring me the other 6. I want them to see what happens to traitors. He handed back the gun and walked out, leaving his security chief to handle the details. The work wasn't finished, but he found his thoughts drifting upward to the bedroom where Mira lay recovering. Was she sleeping? Was she afraid? Did she understand the kind of world she'd just agreed to enter? Did she have any idea what she'd done to him? 3 days later, Mira stood in Konstantin's office, a vast room of dark wood and leather that overlooked the snow-covered grounds, feeling wildly out of place in the designer clothes he'd had delivered to her room. The black pants and silk blouse probably cost more than she used to make in a month, and she kept tugging at the sleeves nervously. Stop fidgeting, Konstantin said, without looking up from the papers he was reviewing. You look fine. I feel like I'm playing dress-up in someone else's life. You are. He finally glanced at her, and something in his expression softened. But it's your life now, not someone else's. Get used to it. He'd been different since that night. Not warm. Konstantin Volkov would never be warm. But less cold. He'd checked on her personally every day during her recovery, had sat in her room working on his laptop while Dr. Ruslan changed her bandages and monitored her healing. The frostbite had been minor, thank God, just some temporary numbness in her fingertips that was already fading. But the bigger changes were internal. She'd watched him execute 6 men in the basement. He'd insisted she watch, said she needed to understand what her presence in his world meant. She'd been sick afterward, vomiting in an elegant powder room while he held her hair back with surprising gentleness. I'm a monster, he told her quietly. I want you to understand that from the beginning. I kill people. I hurt people. I destroy lives when it serves my purposes. If you work for me, if you stay in my world, you'll see things that will haunt you. Then why keep me here? She'd asked, wiping her mouth with a shaking hand. Why not just pay me and send me away? He'd looked at her for a long moment, his gray eyes unreadable. Because you see the monster, and you're still here. Because when I carried you inside that night, you were the first thing I'd cared about in 8 years. Because I'm selfish enough to want to keep you close, even knowing what it will cost you. Now, standing in his office, while winter sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, Mira tried to reconcile the man who'd held her hair while she vomited with the man who'd put bullets in 6 people without hesitation. Your first task, Konstantin said, pulling her from her thoughts. I'm acquiring a hotel chain. Legitimate business. All above board. I need you to review the contracts, flag anything suspicious. You went to college before your father got sick, didn't you? 1 year, business administration, but I had to drop out when... You'll finish. He said it like it was already decided. Online courses while you work. I need someone with legitimate credentials in my legitimate operations, and you're smart enough to handle it? Konstantin. She still stumbled over using his first name. This is too much. The job, the clothes, now college? I can't accept all this. You can and you will. He stood and came around the desk, leaning against it so they were at eye level. Mira, I'm not a charitable man. Everything I'm giving you, I'm giving because it benefits me. You're being trained to be useful to my organization. This isn't kindness. But it felt like kindness. It felt like someone had finally seen her as more than just a means to an end. More than just a pair of hands to clean and serve. What happened to your wife? The question escaped before Mira could stop it, and she immediately wanted to take it back. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have... Katya died 8 years ago, Konstantin said, his voice flat. Cancer, by the time they found it, it was everywhere. She was gone in 6 months. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. It doesn't change anything. He turned away, staring out the window at the snow-covered grounds. She was the best part of me. When she died, she took that part with her. What's left is what you see, the monster who can put bullets in people and sleep soundly afterward. Mira moved closer, driven by an impulse she didn't fully understand. I don't think that's all that's left. No? He glanced at her, something dangerous in his eyes. What else do you see? Someone who carried a freezing maid inside instead of leaving her to die. Someone who sat beside her bed for 3 days. Someone who wants her to finish college. She took a breath. Someone who's been hurt and built walls so high nobody can reach him, but maybe those walls have a door. And you think you can find it? His voice was mocking, but there was something underneath it, something that sounded almost like hope. I don't know, but I'd like to try. Constantine reached out slowly, giving her time to move away. When she didn't, he cupped her face in his hand, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. His touch was surprisingly gentle for a man who dealt in violence. You're playing a dangerous game, Mira Castellano. I've been playing dangerous games since I was 18 and my father got sick. I'm still here. He smiled, then, a real smile that transformed his harsh face into something almost beautiful. Yes, you are. Against all odds, you're still here. The months that followed fell into a pattern that felt almost normal, if normal included armed guards and occasional executions in the basement. Mira proved to be brilliant at the work Constantine gave her. She had an intuitive understanding of contracts and business structures, could spot irregularities and opportunities with equal precision. Within 3 months, she'd saved him $2 million by catching fraud in a construction deal. Within 6, she'd negotiated a real estate acquisition that would have made his legitimate business professors proud. But more than her professional competence, Constantine found himself drawn to her presence. She was quiet but not meek, soft-spoken but not afraid to argue when she thought he was wrong. She challenged him in ways no one had dared since Katya died, pushed him to consider consequences beyond the immediate tactical advantage. You can't just threaten the city councilman, she said one evening, standing in his office with her arms crossed. They'd been working late, as they often did, the rest of the house dark and quiet around them. He's trying to block your casino permit, yes, but if you threaten him and word gets out, you'll lose support from the other council members you've already bought. Then what do you suggest? Constantine leaned back in his chair, openly amused by her defiance. 6 months ago, she would have whispered her disagreement and accepted his decision. Now she fought him openly, secure enough in her position to risk his anger. Let me talk to him. Not as your representative, as myself. Woman to man, human to human. I'll find out what he really wants. What's actually driving his opposition. Maybe it's not about the casino at all. And if it is? Then we find leverage that doesn't involve explicit threats. There's always something, Constantine. Everyone has pressure points. We just have to find his. She was right, as she usually was. The councilman's opposition stemmed from his wife's gambling addiction. He was terrified of enabling more places for her to destroy their finances. Once they understood that, the solution was simple. Fund a gambling addiction treatment center, name it after his wife, and suddenly the councilman became their strongest advocate. It was brilliant. It was subtle. It was exactly the kind of long-term strategic thinking that Constantine had been moving toward, but that most of his organization still didn't understand. You're wasted on hotel contracts, he told her that night, pouring them both a rare celebratory vodka. You should be running one of the major operations. I'm 23 years old and I was a maid 8 months ago, Mira pointed out, accepting the glass. Your people would never accept me in a leadership position. My people accept what I tell them to accept. Do they? Is that why there are whispers that I'm your mistress? That I slept my way into this job? She took a sip of vodka and made a face at the burn. I hear things, Constantine. The staff talks, the soldiers talk, they say you've gone soft, that you're thinking with the wrong head. Rage, immediate and familiar, flooded through him. Names! Give me names! No. She set down her glass. Because then you'll kill them or hurt them, and that proves their point. They're wrong, but violence won't convince them otherwise. Then what will? Time, results. Let me prove myself. Let them see that I'm good at this job regardless of how I got it. She paused, then added quietly, and maybe stop spending quite so much time with me in private. It feeds the rumors. The suggestion felt like a knife between his ribs. The hours he spent with Mira had become the best part of his days. Her insight, her humor, the way she looked at him like he was a man instead of a monster. But she was right. The perception problem was real, and in his world, perception could be as dangerous as actual weakness. Fine, he said curtly. We'll maintain more professional distance. You can work from the East office starting tomorrow. Hurt flashed across her face before she could hide it, and Constantine immediately wanted to take back the words. But that was the problem, wasn't it? He was letting his feelings he shouldn't have, feelings that made him vulnerable, dictate his decisions. That's probably best, Mira said, her voice carefully neutral. I should get back to my room. Early meeting tomorrow with the architect for the Detroit property. She left without waiting for dismissal, and Constantine resisted the urge to call her back. This was necessary. This was smart. This was him protecting both of them from his growing attachment to a woman who deserved better than a monster's obsession. He lasted 3 days before he found an excuse to summon her back to his office. Mira stood at the window of her new office in the East Wing, a beautiful space with antique furniture and a view of the gardens, and admitted to herself that she was miserable. She'd thought putting distance between herself and Constantine was the smart move, the professional move. But she missed him, missed the late-night conversations, the way his eyes would light up when she presented a clever solution, the rare smiles that felt like victories. She was falling for him. Had probably been falling for him since the night he carried her inside, since he showed her that beneath the monster was a man capable of unexpected gentleness. It was stupid and dangerous and completely inappropriate, but her heart didn't care about any of that. A knock interrupted her brooding. Come in. Dmitri entered, his weathered face unusually serious. Miss Castellano, Mr. Volkov requests your presence in his office immediately. Her heart jumped. In 3 days, Constantine had only communicated through emails and brief phone calls, all business. Is something wrong? That's not for me to say, but you should come now. She followed Dmitri through the house, her anxiety building with each step. Had something happened? Was he angry with her? Was he sending her away? But when she entered Constantine's office, he was smiling, not his usual cold expression or even the small smiles he sometimes gave her. This was broad and genuine and made him look 10 years younger. What happened? She asked. Your father. Constantine came around the desk and she noticed papers spread across its surface. I had my medical team review his case. There's a new treatment protocol, experimental, but showing remarkable results. I've arranged for him to be admitted to Northwestern Memorial next week. Mira's legs went weak, and she grabbed the edge of the desk for support. What? How? That hospital, those treatments, they cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yes. Constantine, I can't accept this. It's too much. It's already done. The paperwork is filed. The doctor's briefed. Your father starts treatment Monday. He moved closer, his expression intense. And before you argue, before you tell me this is inappropriate or you can't be bought or whatever moral stand you're preparing to make, this isn't about you. This is about me being selfish. Selfish. I want you here, Mira, not worried and distracted about your father dying, not sending every penny home and starving yourself to afford his medicine. I want you focused and present and... He stopped, jaw clenching. I want you here. Why? She had to know, had to hear him say it. Because I'm falling in love with you. The words came out harsh like an accusation. Because you make me feel human again. Because when you look at me, you see past the monster to whatever's left of the man underneath. Because 3 days without you in this office has been hell, and I'm not strong enough to maintain distance when what I really want is to pull you close and never let go. Mira's breath caught. Constantine, I know I shouldn't feel this way. You're too young, too good, too untouched by the violence that defines my world. I know I should send you away for your own safety, but I'm selfish, Mira. I'm keeping you here because I need you, and I'm powerful enough to take what I need. She should have been frightened by the raw possessiveness in his voice. Instead, she felt relief flooding through her, sweet and dizzying. What if I want to stay? His eyes narrowed. Don't say that unless you mean it. I mean it. She closed the distance between them, her heart pounding. I mean it because I'm falling for you too, because you saved my life and then you gave me a new one. Because underneath all the violence and power, you're kind in ways you don't want anyone to see. Because I think we could be good for each other. I'll ruin you. he warned, but his hands came up to cup her face. Everything I touch turns dark eventually. Then we'll be dark together. She rose on her toes, bringing her mouth close to his. Kiss me, Constantine. Stop talking and kiss me. He did. It was nothing like the gentle romance novels Mira had read as a teenager. Constantine kissed like he did everything else, with total commitment and controlled intensity. His mouth claimed hers with an authority that made her knees weak, his hand sliding into her hair to hold her exactly where he wanted her. She gasped against his lips, and he took advantage, deepening the kiss until she forgot where she ended, and he began. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Constantine rested his forehead against hers. No going back from this. I don't want to go back. My world will try to destroy you. My enemies will use you to hurt me. The organization will test you constantly, and I'm not an easy man to love, Mira. I'm possessive and controlling and dangerous. I know. She smiled, running her fingers through his hair. But you're also loyal and protective, and you held me while I cried after watching you execute those men. You're complicated, Konstantin Volkov. And I want all of it, the good and the bad and everything in between. He kissed her again, softer this time, almost reverent. I'll try, he said against her lips. I'll try to be the man you see when you look at me. You already are. You just don't see it yet. The next 6 months transformed both of them in ways neither had expected. Mira moved into Konstantin's private quarters, and the household quickly adjusted to her presence as his acknowledged partner. The whispers didn't stop entirely, but they changed tone, respect replacing speculation as Mira proved herself invaluable to the organization's operations. She finished her bachelor's degree online, then immediately started on an MBA. She negotiated deals that expanded the legitimate business empire while carefully separating it from the criminal operations. She learned to navigate the dangerous political waters of the organization, earning the grudging respect of even the most skeptical members. And Constantine slowly allowed himself to feel again. He laughed more, smiled more, found himself looking forward to evenings spent with Mira, planning their future rather than dwelling on his violent past. She challenged him to be better, to consider whether violence was truly necessary or just habitual, to build something that could last beyond fear and intimidation. I want to phase out the drug operations, he told her one night as they lay in bed, her head on his chest, move fully legitimate within 5 years. That's ambitious, Mira said carefully. The drugs are 40% of your revenue. I know, but they're also the riskiest operation, the most morally corrosive, and the most likely to eventually bring down everything I've built. His hand stroked through her hair absently. My father built this empire on violence and fear. I can build something better, something you won't be ashamed to be part of. I'm not ashamed now. You should be. The things I've done, Mira, were done before me. You can't change your past, Constantine. You can only choose your future. She propped herself up on an elbow to look at him. If you want to go legitimate, I'll help you. But do it because it's what you want, not because you think it's what I need. What if I want both? She smiled and kissed him. Then we'll make it happen. Together. Christmas came around again, exactly 1 year after the night Mira had nearly died in the snow. The anniversary had been weighing on Constantine's mind for weeks, memories of finding her crumpled form mixing with images of what his life had become since that night. He'd planned this evening carefully, with more attention than he'd given to million-dollar deals. The Christmas dinner this year was smaller, only his most trusted associates, only people who had proven their loyalty to him and their acceptance of Mira. The dining room glowed with candlelight, and snow fell gently outside the windows, beautiful instead of threatening. Mira wore a deep red dress that made her look like Christmas incarnate, and Constantine couldn't take his eyes off her as she laughed at something Dmitri said. His old consigliere had become one of her strongest supporters, often deferring to her judgment on organizational matters. She's good for you, Yevgeny murmured from beside Constantine. The big man rarely spoke unless necessary, which made his words carry extra weight. I've known you 15 years. This is the first time you've seemed alive since Katya. She terrifies me, Constantine admitted quietly. Every day I wake up afraid someone will take her from me. Then protect her. You're good at that. The meal progressed through multiple courses, conversation flowing easily. This wasn't the tense, performative gathering of the previous year. This was almost comfortable, almost familial. Konstantin watched Natalia Ivanov discussing art with Mira, saw Dmitri nodding approvingly at something she said, felt the acceptance of his inner circle settling around her like a cloak. When dessert was cleared, Konstantin stood, the table quieted immediately. 1 year ago tonight, he began, I found someone dying in the snow outside this house. Someone had tried to murder her to prove I was weak. His eyes swept the table. That person, and those who helped him, are dead. But the woman who survived that night is here with us now. He turned to Mira, who was watching him with wide eyes, clearly having no idea where he was going with this. Mira, you've transformed my life and my organization in ways I never imagined possible. You've made me want to be better, to build something lasting instead of ruling through fear alone. You've given me hope for a future I thought died 8 years ago. He pulled a small box from his pocket and moved to kneel beside her chair. You've given me everything. Let me give you my name. Gasps echoed around the table as he opened the box to reveal a ring, a simple but perfect diamond solitaire that caught the candlelight and threw rainbows across her face. Marry me, Konstantin said. Not a question, but not quite a command either. An invitation, an offer, a plea. Be my wife. Be my partner in all things. Let me spend the rest of my life proving I deserve you. Tears streamed down Mira's face, but she was smiling through them. Yes, she whispered. Yes, you ridiculous man. Of course, yes. The table erupted in applause as Konstantin slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her, not caring that everyone was watching, not caring about maintaining his fearsome reputation. In this moment, he was just a man who'd been given a second chance at love and was smart enough to grab it with both hands. I love you, he murmured against her lips. I love you too, monster and man and everything in between. Everything? Everything, she confirmed, now and always. Outside, snow continued to fall, but inside the Volkov mansion, there was only warmth and light and the promise of a future neither of them had dared to imagine a year ago. The Mafia boss had found his redemption in a freezing girl's survival, and she had found her salvation in a monster's unexpected capacity for love. It wasn't a fairy tale. They would face challenges, enemies, the constant danger of their world, but they would face it together. Two unlikely souls who had found in each other exactly what they needed. Someone who saw past the surface to the truth underneath. Someone strong enough to stand beside them in the darkness. Someone brave enough to believe in redemption, even when it seemed impossible. As the celebration continued around them, Konstantin held Mira close and allowed himself to feel something he hadn't felt in 8 years. Hope. Real, unqualified, terrifying hope for a future that held more than violence and power. A future that held her smile, her laugh, her fierce strength and gentle touch. A future that held love. And for a man who'd lived in winter for so long, that hope felt exactly like coming in from the cold.